everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports. Really excited to be live again on the channel today. This is going to be a little bit of a shorter live today. Of course, I was live earlier for about 5.5 hours on the channel. And of course, as soon as I logged off, there was some more news that came out. So I'm now joined by my co-creator, Austin. Austin, welcome to the live stream today. How are you doing?
Oh, great. Ready to dive into some of these rumors. A lot to digest from the news that just came out from Woj.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. So let's go ahead and take a look at it here, Austin. I'll have you kind of drive the bus here on this, and then we'll go ahead and look at some other rumors from Shams after this one.
Yeah, so kind of looking at it, a three-way deal is kind of being put into place potentially between the Lakers, Jazz, T-Wolves. And now this is going to be huge. The fact that the Lakers could land their point guard D'Lo, and they also get a really nice scorer in Malik Beasley, good shooter, talented player. Mike Conley and picks go to the Timberwolves, and Russell Westbrook ends up landing with the Jazz. Now, I think that the fact that Conley is being shopped elsewhere too is kind of interesting. I want to dive into some of those suspected teams in your opinion, but let's just say hypothetically a deal were to go down in terms of, the picks remain pretty similar between, the Wolves and the Jazz in terms of what's exchanged. Who wins this deal without knowing the draft pick compensation?
Yeah, I think that's really the big question. My initial reaction when I first saw some of the reports were a little unsure about what I felt about this. Now, it does really depend on the draft pick compensation, especially from Minnesota's perspective. I think Utah, no matter what happens here, as long as they come out with at least one, maybe 2 first-round picks, I feel like they're in a really, really strong position because of this. And then if you look at the other situation for Minnesota, you're moving off of an expiring contract in D'Angelo Russell. So if you get any significant draft compensation, I'm talking 2 or 3 second rounders or a first round pick potentially, I feel like you're doing out really, really well, especially while landing Mike Conley if this ultimately does come to fruition for the Timberwolves, because Mike Conley, in my opinion, despite I think being a worse overall player than D'Angelo Russell in terms of some of the upside, his scoring output, I do think he's a very good fit into what this team currently is, which I know we will talk about a little bit later on, Austin, which kind of guides me here to going over to Shams Charania on Twitter, because he has a little bit of a different report on this deal. So we'll go ahead and jump into that, and then you and I can further discuss what this is going to end up looking like. But according to Shams here, ongoing discussions have included Utah's Malik Beasley, and he reports here Jared Vanderbilt as well, which I think is very likely to be included in this. If you look at LA's perspective specifically with what the Lakers are trying to do, they're trying to add, in my opinion, a lot more talent and more depth onto their team. Part of trading Russell Westbrook is turning one big contract into hopefully 3 or 4 smaller contracts that you can kind of reverse engineer the trade they made with Washington, where they sent out KCP, Kuzma, a draft pick, and other pieces. You're trying to reverse that now and try and get back a little bit more compensation in terms of role players and guys that you can fit into your rotation, which is why Malik Beasley and Vando make sense in this. And he also reports that sides are working through pick protections and additional draft compensation too. The way that I'm reading that is second round picks. But there's a lot going on right now, Austin. And I want to know from your perspective too, obviously, I know that you're not the biggest Mike Conley guy. So I want to know your thoughts on this for, kind of all parties involved, just with the early returns. Obviously, nothing is finalized yet.
To me, it is a must for the Utah Jazz to proceed with this deal. Whatever they have to do to get this done, in my opinion, is a must. With where their team is currently sitting, where the future of this franchise is, Mike Conley does not fit the current timeline of what they're trying to do. Mike Conley fit the previous regime's timeline and them trying to be competitive in the Western Conference. Now that no longer exists, now this is a time for them to really load up on some draft pick compensation, load up on some young talent, and proceed from there. At this point in time, they've already moved on from Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, which were their 2 franchise cornerstones. Now some of those like tertiary and secondary pieces are going to be going out the door as well. We've already seen the start of it. Now I think that is going to continue onward. So in my opinion, I think that it would be huge for the Utah Jazz to get involved in this with 2 teams that are competing heavily in that Western Conference with the T-Wolves and the Lakers. Now, the fit with Minnesota, I think makes sense. Obviously Mike Conley is more of a playmaker than D'Angelo Russell. However, D'Lo is, a better shot creator. He's a guy that is able to get off his own shot. And with how he played in the month of January, there's a lot of question marks. Were they actually going to move him? how serious would they be about actually transpiring and making a trade happen? Because of how well the team had played in the month of January, it was thought that maybe he's in line for an extension, which was not on the radar the first couple of months of the season with how poorly everything had gone with him as an individual and him as a team, the fit, the question marks, the cryptic tweets. All of those things were a mosh pit of disaster for the Timberwolves. Then it seemed to be almost, kind of turned around in that month of January. He had been playing so much better, shooting the ball effectively, playmaking. Everything was kind of falling into line in terms of team chemistry. Him and Rudy Gobert in the pick and roll, very, very effective. Overall, it's tough for them now to have to make a decision like this. But like we talk about, when you have a guy that's an unrestricted free agent, that forces your hands in a lot of situations and makes you do things that you might not necessarily want to do for the here and now.
Right, exactly. And I think there's a little bit of confusion here too in the comment section about the value and kind of the structure of this trade. Olja here saying, how are the Lakers getting all these players for so little? This looks like another only for the Lakers type deal. And then here we also see Chompazilla say they devalued Westbrook, but now they're trying to trade him for all-star value. I can tell you that's not what is happening here. And in fact, I'm going to show you a mock trade that I've made here that is going to kind of signify what this is ultimately going to end up looking like. Again, here, this is a 3-team deal. The Utah Jazz likely land Russell Westbrook, who they will likely buy out. He will probably enter free agency and be free to sign with another team other than the Los Angeles Lakers this season. They will also be sending out 2 first-round picks here to Utah for the services of Malik Beasley and Jared Vanderbilt. And in order to get this deal to work, this is where the additional draft pick compensation really becomes important in this. The Lakers, of course, land D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, and Jared Vanderbilt. And if we were looking at this as, hey, look, the Lakers are trying to trade Russell Westbrook like he's an all-star. When players trade all-stars, they give up the player and get role players back and picks. In fact, they're trading Russ and picks here to get role players. This is not valuation as a star. This is not evaluation as an all-star. This is not evaluation even as a good starter. Russell Westbrook is being perceived as a negative contract, even as an expiring, which is something that rarely ever happens in the NBA, to be honest. And I think, honestly, the Lakers are in the process of potentially getting fleeced here, while they could just let Russell Westbrook walk to free agency. And they could go into this offseason with cap space if they renounce Rui Hachimura and potentially sign a guy like Kyrie Irving. I think that's a much better route for them than going this way. To be honest, where you don't have to give up your 2027, 2029 first-round picks. And then the Timberwolves here, Austin, we see they get Mike Conley, who I think is a good fit onto their roster. For reference, for anyone wondering about Conley, why they would potentially make that move, he's averaging just under 8 assists a game. Austin, you referenced how much of a better playmaker he is than D'Angelo Russell. I completely agree with that. He's averaging over an assist a game more than Russell, while still averaging less than only 1.7 turnovers a game, compared to D'Angelo Russell, who's hovering around 3 turnovers a game this season. Significantly safer with the basketball. And if you look at the Wolves plus minus this year versus opponents, they have been very close with a lot of teams. Those 1 to 2 turnovers a game can go a really long way in winning games that you're typically losing. That extra assist is really important. Plus, we know Mike Conley's a good role player next to a guard like Anthony Edwards. We saw it with Donovan Mitchell, and we know how good he is with Rudy Gobert. This is a value fit for the Timberwolves. Part of me wonders why that D'Angelo Russell and Conley weren't, in the original deal, honestly, going to Minnesota this past summer where, we had a lot of picks exchanging hands. I wonder what discussions looked like in the summer when D'Angelo Russell was traded. And then the Timberwolves here also land 4 second-round picks. And I think that's really where the evaluation of values coming into play here. 2 second-rounders come from the Lakers. 2 second-rounders come from the Jazz. That way the Jazz are the ones receiving those 2 firsts. I think that they're the ones with the valuable players here in Beasley and Vanderbilt. D'Angelo Russell's on an expiring, so it's a little bit different. To me, Austin, what's your thoughts on kind of this mock trade that I've created? What do you think here about the draft picks and the players exchanging hands here?
Yeah, I definitely think in terms of actual value and fairness, it's pretty even overall. Now, the Jazz do very well in this. Obviously they're having to give up Malik Beasley and Jared Vanderbilt, Mike Conley. That's a lot to give up from a roster from an actual core standpoint. But once again, it all comes down to timeline. Malik Beasley, I don't necessarily see him being a long-term guy there. Capitalizing on that, capitalizing on value in terms of extending the value of the trade that you had gotten from Rudy Gobert. I think that speaks volumes here. Now, if you think about the actual total net of that trade, you had basically two more first round picks in addition to what you had already netted for Rudy Gobert. I think that's a phenomenal haul. It's actually just incredible when you look at it like that.
Right. I definitely think that with the way that picks are changing hands here, this is why this deal is getting reported on before anything's finalized, because there's a lot of moving pieces right now. And that's something that we have to monitor, right? There's reports out there as well right now that the Timberwolves are potentially shopping D'Angelo Russell to other teams. I'm still sure that in the building right now as well, I'm sure that there's discussions about keeping D'Angelo Russell. I don't think he's for sure shipped out. Like you said, Austin, you referenced his January, how well he played in the month of January. There was a lot going on in that building in terms of positivity. They're 13-5 in their last 18 games. They've been playing a lot better as of late, actually 13-6 now in their last 19, and I think the Timberwolves, it's interesting to see them kind of maybe shake things up here despite finding some footing. And you wonder, Austin, with this move, the Timberwolves are probably better for the next 3 months after making this trade. Do you think they're actually better off within the next 3 years after making a move like this?
So I guess it really depends on how you look at that. I think in the short term, they might actually just be better in terms of fit wise with Mike Conley. Now let's think about all the mouths to feed within that offense. When you have Anthony Edwards already and Karl-Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell, this is for sure going to be Anthony Edwards' team. There's no question about it. It's already been stated. We've seen it. The eye test will suggest that. Now, with Mike Conley coming into the fold, I think Karl-Anthony Towns is going to get better. Rudy Gobert is going to play better. D'Angelo Russell is just really disappointing. Outside of the month of January, he has not been a very good fit for this team. But once again, that's partially due to them trying to build some team chemistry. And now I think Mike Conley is going to be a very, very effective point guard for them in the short term. And who's to say, maybe the following year he gets traded. I guess we have to kind of evaluate how that goes, but it's tough exactly with how the Minnesota Timberwolves, how they paid so much, giving up what ended up being Jonathan Kuminga and Andrew Wiggins in exchange for him. That trade now looks even worse, especially with this is kind of the value you're kind of looking at this point.
Right. You kind of see an asset drain in Minnesota. You just think about, former number 1 overall pick, which, essentially was Kevin Love. Wiggins was the big part of that Kevin Love trade. He goes out the door. Another pick that ended up becoming number 7 overall, Jonathan Kuminga, a wing with, I think, high upside still in this league. Both of them go out the door, like you mentioned, for D'Angelo Russell. And now to see him, moved in a deal that you don't even get a first-round pick probably, and instead you get Mike Conley and second-rounders, it just doesn't feel like great value. It really does not. And to be honest, it's kind of a tough situation for Minnesota. Like, the one thing I like about this, getting 4 second-round picks back, you are able to probably renegotiate some later trades. It gives you flexibility, especially with the second-rounders I included in this. 2 in 2026, 1 in 2025. You have other value moves that you can make at a later date if you want to. Keep some of your flexibility open to make trades, which I think is important for Tim Connolly, just given the current state of where they're at after the Rudy Gobert trade. And I think the one thing this move probably indicates to me as well, they are committing to Rudy Gobert being a part of this team long term. They believe Mike Conley can help Gobert get back to where he was in terms of his overall production. Now the only question is, does Chris Finch get replaced with Quinn Snyder this offseason? Because I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility either. Kind of becoming the Minnesota Jazz in a way, Austin. We've seen Minnesota do this in the past after hiring Tom Thibodeau, becoming kind of the Minnesota Bulls for a little bit. What's your thoughts on kind of Finch, what they're figuring out? Do you believe he's still going to stay around as the head coach this offseason, or what's your thoughts on Finch at this moment?
I think they are probably going to stay committed to Finch. It kind of depends on what happens, but at the end of the day, I think they're going to be committed to him. I think the front office likes what Chris Finch has done so far. And you look at in terms of consistency, I mean, this is one of the better head coaches in Minnesota Timberwolves history in terms of what he's brought from a year-to-year basis. However, in that same vein, this is the most talent that they've had since 2004. So overall, this is a team that's trending in the right direction. And it was a little scary at the start of the year because they were not playing well at all. They're out of sorts. Now it's going to be kind of interesting to see how it works back with Karl-Anthony Towns re-entering the lineup. What does that look like? Another thing that probably should be stated on here that we have to discuss is Naz Reed. Does Naz Reed get moved at this deadline? Are they going to extend him? There's a lot of different things that are in play here. And in your opinion, do you think Naz Reed is a long-term Timberwolf, or do you think it's a good chance that he maybe gets caught up in a trade like this?
That's a great question. I think that Naz Reed has a lot of value around the league right now. Even to the point where they could maybe even get a protected first-round pick for him, which going into the season, I don't think you and I would have guessed that would have been the approximate value for Naz Reed, especially going into a contract year. But right now, with the way he's played, I think that's roughly what he's worth. But the issue is a lot of the teams willing to probably trade for him have a lot of picks out the door. Philadelphia comes to mind as a team looking for a backup center. Brooklyn as well. Obviously they just recouped some assets in a trade with Dallas. But I think ultimately, with where everything sits right now, I think Naz Reed stays in Minnesota. I'd be kind of surprised to see him traded. I think that they have a commitment to re-signing him. You look at where they're at with the tax as well. It's going to be expensive in terms of what A-Rod, Mark Lowry end up having to pay for this team. Of course, right now, Taylor is going to be, kind of taking that as well in terms of the wallets and how much he has to pay out of that. But Illuminati Gaming here says, hit the like, guys. Make sure you guys all smash that like button. Just a reminder, this is going to be a short 30-minute live special. We've already been live here for about 16 minutes. So got another 14 minutes or so, but I really appreciate all of you guys stopping in again that were in here earlier today. Yeah, pretty crazy to see 2 streams in one day, but I really hope you guys are enjoying it. Venkata, a Clippers fan, Austin, I know you're a big Clippers fan too. He says, Clippers really breaking up the 3-team deal to get themselves in on D'Lo. As a Clippers fan, do you think that now is the time to maybe jump in? There's a lot of rumors about point guards for the Los Angeles Clippers. I've been thinking Fred VanVleet the whole time, but D'Angelo Russell has been a name we've heard, and now it sounds like there are more options for Minnesota when it comes to trading D'Lo. Is that something you think could be an option for your Clippers?
I don't think so. I actually don't think that's necessarily in play. Now, that might be a hotter take. However, when you look at what this team needs, it's not a D'Angelo Russell. You already have a lot of guys that need the ball in their hands to be effective. Now, I don't think that the Clippers really mesh well with D'Angelo Russell. D'Angelo Russell as an individual talent is a very good player. However, when you look at what it's going to be like for a fit alongside of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, 2 guys that handle the ball a ton on the offensive side in half-court sets, I just don't see that being the real actual outcome here. Mike Conley's a better fit for the Clippers, as much as I hate to say it. It's just the fact of the matter. A guy that's able to, play make for others and essentially get some open shots. A guy that can apply pressure to the rim. And I don't see that being the case here with D'Angelo Russell. I think it would be a little clunky, pick and roll with Zubats and D'Lo. I don't love it.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. We did have an interesting 3-team deal today, Austin, that we talked about on the channel quite a bit, which I wanted to get your perspective on here. It's a little bit different in terms of what is going on in this one, but it was kind of brought to us by a viewer. I made a couple alterations on it for what I would like to see happen, and I want to get your thoughts on it now for the Clippers. There's been a lot of rumors about the Clippers potentially landing Fred VanVleet, but also the Magic have been involved in some of those rumors as well. So we kind of had a meet in the middle point. And I think you brought up pressure on the rim out of the point guard position. That's been an important component missing from the Clippers roster, and I think they solve it here with Markelle Fultz actually coming in, plus a 2nd-round pick in 2024. Fred VanVleet goes to Orlando, and the Raptors would receive Luke Kennard, Amir Coffey, who I know you really love. It'd be hard to see those 2 guys walk out the door. And then they also get some compensation from the Magic in terms of draft assets for VanVleet services. What are your thoughts on the framework of a deal like this? What are your initial reactions here?
Yeah, so start from the Magic's perspective. I think this is kind of what they need, is a consolidation of assets, especially if they're going to try to compete in the Eastern Conference. They have a lot of quote guys, but they don't have a guy, if that makes sense. Now, when you look at Fred VanVleet, I think he would do pretty well in Orlando. I think when you look at the framework of what they're building there, it makes sense for them to be a little more aggressive here and try to go for a guy like VanVleet. In that same vein, though, this is a move that is more, let's try to push from just outside the playoffs and let's make a real push towards it. I don't see that really being the case for the Magic. I still don't think this is enough to get them over the hump and really catapult themselves long term into the Eastern Conference conversation. However, I think it's a winning move. It definitely is a winning move if that's what their goal is, to just creep up a little bit. I'm okay with that. But looking at it from the Clippers perspective, losing Luke Kennard and Amir Coffey is tough. However, getting Markelle Fultz, like you said, a guy that can put pressure on the rim, I think that makes a lot of sense. And Chuma Okeke, I mean, I love his game, and I think that would help out the Clippers tremendously. They need another forward that, can block shots, that's athletic, and, can really operate out of the pick and roll as a lob threat. To me, that makes sense. I understand that Chuma Okeke thing. Picking up a second-round pick, also important for a team that's been so, devastated by, draft pick trades, especially the Paul George one. Now, losing Luke Kennard's tough, and losing Amir Coffey is tough. However, Amir Coffey is a guy that is replaceable. They have a guy that's very similar in terms of, Brandon Boston, that can make a lot of plays off the bench. Amir Coffey gets some run, but not significant enough minutes where you say we can't move him. Luke Kennard, on the other hand, is a guy that has actually struggled to find a true fit with Kawhi and Paul George. Last year, we had seen the ascension of Luke Kennard in terms of aggressiveness, but seemingly when those other two are on the floor, Luke Kennard's effectiveness goes down. And when you actually look at his shooting splits and everything, he's great. But when it comes down to it, I just don't know long term if they're better suited, to make a deal like this or just to hold on to them.
Right. That's one of the big questions. I think, this is an interesting framework. And I think, GMs right now, they're considering all of these different options, right? Which is why we've seen some, slow coverage this year in terms of what's going on. There's not been any big moves yet, other than the Kyrie Irving to Dallas move, and that's because Dallas was very desperate, as was Brooklyn, to get off of him. So it's a completely different situation. And let's get back to our little Lakers 3-team deal here, because I want to, Tristan here is kind of confused why the Timberwolves would help the Lakers in this situation. And I think there's one thing that you're kind of overlooking here, Tristan, in terms of team building and how to win games. The Timberwolves here are focused on improving themselves. They turn an expiring asset. Look at it just from Minnesota's perspective. They're trading one piece here, D'Angelo Russell. And in return, they're getting Mike Conley, who has an extra year on his deal, who they feel like is a really good fit with Rudy Gobert and Anthony Edwards, who can play on and off the ball, has been very effective at limiting turnovers this season. He had a 4-game stretch where he did not turn the ball over one time. He averages one less turnover per game than D'Lo, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but it is when in the grand scheme of things. That's 82 turnovers a year that you avoid. And he's also someone who's efficient, again, off the ball, on the ball, as well as adding 4 second-round picks. You're effectively trading an expiring contract for a guy you plan on sticking around for at least an extra year, and 4 draft assets, albeit, yes, second-rounders, but it gives you avenues to make future trades. So, again, you might be thinking, oh, this is helping the Lakers. Here's the one thing about the Lakers. They're not good. They are really not good. And do you really think that adding 3 players into their lineup that have never really played together, Malik Beasley, D'Lo and Malik Beasley, and obviously Vando have all played together, but none of them have played with LeBron James, or Anthony Davis. And if you think about it, Minnesota right now is 4.5 games ahead of the Lakers, actually, I believe that's a little bit less, 3.5 games ahead of the Los Angeles Lakers in the standings. The Timberwolves are not worried about the Lakers catching them, especially in this trade. The Timberwolves feel like they're getting better while adding draft assets. That's why this is a potential option moving forward. But Justin, I'm interested in your thoughts on that as well. Do you think this is a positive move for the Timberwolves if they end up making a move like this one on the screen?
Now it's tough to really say, because are we saying that D'Lo the rest of the way is the D'Lo we saw in January, or is it basically the December, November version of D'Lo where he just struggled mightily? I don't know what we're going to see out of him the rest of the way, but if you kind of go off of the whole season as a mean and just take the mean of it, it's going to be a net positive for them, in my opinion. And I don't even really like Mike Conley that much, to be completely transparent with the audience. I'm not a Mike Conley guy, but I do believe that fit-wise, he works a lot better alongside Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert than D'Angelo Russell. D'Angelo Russell is a much better shot maker, shot creator. However, Mike Conley is a better playmaker, takes care of the ball, and really puts guys in a position to score.
Right, and you think about Minnesota this year, they're bottom 5 in terms of points allowed in fast break, situation. They give up the most points off turnovers out of any team in playoff seeding right now. They're not a good team when it comes to taking care of the basketball, which is why Mike Conley solves some of the issues that you have. Not to mention he is a better defender than D'Angelo Russell. Now, I don't think Mike Conley's a very good defender, but D'Angelo Russell is a bad defender. I think that there's positives here for Minnesota, and I think that you think about it in terms of like playing on 2K, D'Angelo Russell's the better player. But at the end of the day, like, we're talking about real basketball here, where taking care of the ball matters, where getting your team into an offensive set matters, and Mike Conley is better than D'Angelo Russell at those things. Caleb Elmer here is saying that D'Lo is playing tonight. Remember, that doesn't really mean a lot. Harrison Barnes got traded mid-game, and the Mavericks literally had to pull him out of the game when he got traded to Sacramento a few years back. So, players will play throughout the trade deadline. I know some teams are sitting guys, making it really obvious that, first of all, either they're available, or second of all, that they're not going to risk an injury. I think Minnesota here is at a spot where, hey, if they still want to win games, they're going to play D'Lo while he's on the roster. And nothing's for certain on a D'Lo trade, but it doesn't mean he's untouchable at this point, or that he's not going to, end up, getting moved at the deadline to some other team. Nick here says, you're saying the Jazz buy out Westbrook, give up Conley, Vanderbilt, Beasley, and 2 second-rounders for a first-round draft pick. I know they're getting 2 first-round picks that are unprotected. That's major compensation. You can talk about giving up 2 seconds. Sign me up for the 2 Lakers first-round picks when LeBron James by 2027 is going to be 42 years old and 44 years old in 2029. Sign me up for those picks. You think Anthony Davis is going to play 45 games those seasons? Like, sign me up, right? Like, Austin, what's your evaluation on those picks? Because I know everyone around the world seems like, oh, those picks aren't that. I think they're very valuable. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, when you actually look at the future outlook of this Lakers team, unless something drastic changes in terms of their future outlook, it's a team that's going to get old quick at that time. LeBron's going to hang around. However, he's not going to be the same LeBron that we've seen. Now, the actual regression has been slower than we've anticipated, right? He's still playing at a very high level, but when it comes to 2027, 2029, he's not going to be that same guy. Anthony Davis is going to continue to miss a lot of games in his career. It doesn't matter if it's the start of his career, middle of his career, end of his career. This guy is going to miss a lot of games. I mean, an eye poke and the guy's out 7 games. That's just the fact of the matter. Anthony Davis is not that guy that will be able to carry you at that point in time. In 2027, he is not going to be able to do that. Now, that's not to say that they're not able to land another free agent if they have to mix up some things to be competitive. But at the end of the day, I think those 2 Laker picks are way more valuable than people are giving them credit for, in my opinion, especially with the fact that if they don't have any protection backups or anything like that, if they're just unprotected, this is going to be a very, very valuable pull for the Utah Jazz, who are not necessarily looking to win right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. They entered the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes by making a move like this as well, which is a very underrated part in this whole discussion. Demetrius Lee here says, bad deal. Lakers can't get Kyrie if they trade Westbrook. I completely agree. The issue, though, is the Lakers GM doesn't really know how any of this worked. He is unqualified to have the job that he has. He was an agent for Kobe Bryant. He has a good relationship with Jeannie Buss. It's an example of friends helping friends out, him getting that job. He is not qualified to be an NBA GM. I firmly believe that. If you look at his track record, his decision-making, it has been brutal. Magic Johnson landed LeBron to the Los Angeles Lakers. Since then, everything else has been a crap show. The bubble championship, it counts, but you have to wonder if it wasn't a bubble, do the Clippers win that year? Or does another team arise and, pull it out that season? That's a honest question. Now, I'm not discrediting the championship. They're the team that rose above and beyond. They won that year. With no travel, they're the ones that took care of business. But in a normal year, I don't know what happens. And if you're looking at, hindsight and how to build a team, I don't know if the Lakers and Rob Pelinka are a model of how to do this, right? And I really don't think they are. Otherwise, they wouldn't have traded for Russell Westbrook in the first place. But I do want to look here at Venkata, Austin, especially while we got you on, because he wants to see some Clippers trade for Fred VanVleet. We talked about one where, we see VanVleet go to the Orlando Magic. Here we have one of him going to the Clippers, Austin. I want to get your perspective on this one as well as a Clippers fan yourself. You guys land VanVleet, and I know this one's going to be a polarizing one. You get off of John Wall's money. You get off of Robert Covington, who's been, so-so for you, doesn't really play that often. You do have to give up Terrence Mann, though, and a 2029 first-round pick that's top 3 protected with a backup into the second round if it does not convey. Austin, what's your initial thoughts on this one?
Like this one, I'm not overly ecstatic about. I think Fred VanVleet, whatever you have to do essentially to make Kawhi Leonard happy, and if he feels like that's the fit, sure, it makes sense. But when you actually look at Fred VanVleet's numbers, less than impressive actually. When you look at the shooting splits, when you look at what he's done this year, less than impressive. I think a lot of people have overrated him in terms of his production this year. But at the end of the day, I don't know if this is the move that gets them, to that next step. I think VanVleet's a quality player to add. However, at the price that it's going to take, I don't love moving Terrence Mann at a first round pick. Those are the Robert Covington, sure, that's okay. John Wall, sure. But overall, I just don't think VanVleet's that guy to push you over the top.
Right, and you look at it like structurally, skill-wise, and yes, Jim, I'm glad that someone was able to respond to you. Thank you for everyone that is in here still, by the way. I really do appreciate you. Demetrius, I think your idea here is very good, by the way. But Austin, like we were talking about earlier, you mentioned the need for a guard who could get to the rim. It seems like right now Norm Powell is really the only kind of guy who gives you a little bit of that juice in terms of, taking a guy off the dribble, getting all the way to the rim. And of course, VanVleet's not that guy. He, if I believe right, he has never shot above 45% on two-pointers in his career, which is not a big positive for what this Clippers team really needs. They don't need another perimeter scorer. I think they need a guy who's an interior scorer, drive, kick guy to give them a little bit of juice in their offense next to Kawhi and Paul George. Austin, like right now, there's not a lot of those kind of guys available, which is why I thought Kyrie would have been such an awesome rental for you. Whereas the Mavericks are in a completely different boat and didn't need to make that move, in my opinion. How would you say your guys' title odds are, just in the basis of what your needs are still at this point? How do you feel about your team at this spot?
Yeah, I mean, I don't love where they're at, to be completely honest. I think they're a team that you could consider as a contender. When you look at the team as a roster-wise, one of the more talented rosters in the entire league. It's just, this is kind of the same issue we've had over the last couple of years that me and you have talked about over and over again, not having true sets to get you a basket. A lot of it's, I'm going to beat you mano y mano. There's just not a lot of ebb and flow to the offense. Sometimes it gets stagnant. They don't have certain sets that will just get them a bucket. It's more of, hey, Paul George or Kawhi, go cook. We're gonna play 5 out. We're gonna kick to the corners, and that's just the premise of it. Luke Kennard one corner, you got Nick Batum in the other corner, and that's just kind of how their offense operates. Now, I have some concerns at center. I think Zubac is going to play too much again this year, and he's going to get played off the floor, but not soon enough in the postseason. So overall, I don't feel like they're actual real contenders. I think you can talk about them on paper as real contenders, but at the end of the day, I have some concerns. However, if you have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard playing, it's a very, very high win percentage when they are on the floor together. I think it was 77%, which is an astronomical number when you have those two on the court at the same time, which has not been the case ever since they both arrived in LA.
Right, those two have been very, very good in their tenure there when they both play together. But again, that's the big question. Michael, we are going to be ending the live stream here in just a minute. We were only hopping on here for about half an hour, a little bit over now at this spot. But just to talk about the Lakers, Wolves, Jazz news. So if you did come in late, just rewind the stream here. I think it was a very informational stream where we talked about some potential trades for both the Lakers, Jazz, and Timberwolves, what they're going to do with D'Angelo Russell. Russell Westbrook, what's going to happen with him as a buyout candidate. There's a lot of really good information in this shorter live stream, but I think it was a very good live stream. I'm very happy that Austin was able to join here as well. He knows his Clippers stuff, so it was a lot of fun talking about Fred VanVleet to the Clippers, maybe a little bit of D'Lo drama to the Clippers as well. But just a big reminder here, guys, before we end today's live stream. Again, first of all, thank you to everyone that stopped in here today. We really do appreciate you. We would love for all 273 of you right now to hit the like button. It lets us know we're doing a good job here at Utility Sports. We'd also love for you to hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell as well, because tomorrow we are going to be live for the NBA trade deadline. I'd love to make sure you guys get all notified the moment that I go live, so you can hop in here, ask questions about your favorite team. We can address all sorts of drama, rumors, who's going where tomorrow. I'm going to be live all day long for probably at least 7, maybe 7.5 hours tomorrow. So, we're going to rest up here. I'm going to rest my voice a little bit, but I've had a lot of fun streaming for the NBA trade deadline. Austin, any concluding thoughts on your end?
I'm just excited to see how it goes. And one final prompt for you. Who is the most likely player to get dealt tomorrow?
That's a great question. I think Fred VanVleet is my number one guy for who's going to get traded. Just given the situation right now in Toronto, he's on a final year of his deal. The Orlando Magic are slated to have cap space. There's a lot of rumors saying that they will go sign him. If he actually does hit free agency, they have a lot of ability to offer him a big contract. So I think that ultimately VanVleet gets dealt to where I'm not fully sure yet. Could be Orlando, could be LA to the Clippers. Barton as well is a very good option as well. That's a great point, John, because he's been getting some DNPs as of late. Tommy wants to know, will Luka and Kyrie win tonight? No Luka tonight, unfortunately, but I think Kyrie is going to have a nice game, 35 to 37 points tonight against the Clippers, and the Mavericks lose by 8. Austin, is that right?
Right. You just keep telling yourself that.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for stopping in. Really do appreciate you. Jim wants to know what time tomorrow. My plan is to be live by 8 a.m. Central Time at the latest. So stop in around then. That's 9 a.m. Eastern, which will be 6 a.m. Pacific. So we'll be live early, and we'll be live all day long. So make sure you guys stop in. I'm really excited. Michael, thanks for stopping in again as well. Golja, thanks to you as well. Go follow us on Twitter. Links in the description, and we'll catch you guys in the very next Utility Sports video.